Great. So we're located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innuak, the Ashininanak, and the Dakota Iote, and we're on the homeland of the Red River Métis. Green Action Center is dedicated to working in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation through our programs and our operations. So we're joining you today from the Sustainable Transportation team here at Green Action Center. You might also be familiar with us from our waste reduction programs. Perhaps your workplace has had a workplace audit. Our composting programs, like the Master Composting course, our First Nations waste minimization program, or Compost Winnipeg. So GoTober is running all month long. It's new season and it's all about making new routines. We like to set up GoTober as a month-long event because it's not all or nothing, like a week-long challenge. So we really encourage people just to be thinking about 1 or 2 trips per week that they can make in a more sustainable way. And our hope is that with it being a month-long event, that we can form some new habits this month to take with us throughout the rest of the year. And of course, who doesn't love great prizes? If you're entering your trips into your commute calendar, you'll be entered to win prizes such as tickets to the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre, Prairie Theatre Exchange, Manitoba Theatre for Young People. We've got some great prize packs from places like Great Plains Press, Into the Music, and other great prizes to give away. And of course, commuting sustainably is good for the environment, but we also want you to be thinking about those other co-benefits, like getting out into the fresh air, sustainable transportation being good for health and good for mental wellness as well. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Lilia Bess. Lilia has just joined us here at Green Action Center over this past month. I'm really excited to have her as part of my team here, and she's going to lead us through the webinar today. I'll turn it over to you, Lilia.
All right, thank you so much, Mel, for that very nice introduction. So yeah, as Mel said, my name is Lilia Best, and I'm very excited to be here leading this webinar today. So the first question, of course, why carpool? So in Winnipeg, the average mode share for driving is about 80%. So that means that about 80% of trips in Winnipeg are being taken by cars, specifically by single occupancy vehicles. So people with vehicles with just one person in the car. So if Winnipeg is going to meet our climate goals that we've set out for the next couple decades, we need to have that reduced to at least 50%. Ideally even more than that, but 50% is a good goal to start with. But we also know that the existing transportation infrastructure that we have can make it pretty difficult for some individuals to switch to other modes of transportation like buses or cycling or walking. If you live pretty far away from where you're working, it can be difficult to take those routes, especially if you live outside of the city or commuting in. There might not even be a bus, or if you're living sort of on the edges of the city, those buses might not be coming regularly enough to get you to your destination on time. So as a result, we know that carpooling is really the best and most realistic option that Manitoba has right now to improve our health, our wellness, our air quality, and some of those congestion issues. So we can move on to the next slide, I think. All right. So our response to that is GoManitoba. So that is our platform that many of you here are probably familiar with. If you've found out about this webinar from being on our GoManitoba network. So GoManitoba acts as a platform to connect people who are interested in carpooling. So it's sort of like some of those other platforms that are out there, like maybe Uber, Lyft, that really just serve to bring people together. And so you can use GoManitoba to find people to carpool with who take similar routes or who are in the same network as you. So if your workplace has become set up as a network on GoManitoba, that means you can find people who are commuting to your same workplace, maybe coming from your area, and so can connect with people that way. You can also use the app to connect with people who aren't in your network. If maybe you volunteer at a similar organization or something like that, or just making trips in the same, you work nearby somebody who works at a different office who's also using GoManitoba. So that's an option too. Next slide. All right, so what we're really going to focus on today is tips for how to set up a carpool that is both safe and successful. I think that's, one of the things that we hear most often from folks is that they're interested in carpooling, but maybe worried about some of those safety aspects, which is totally fair. So we're going to go over some tips to help mitigate some of that. So in terms of starting a carpool, if you connect with somebody through GoManitoba, you guys are both interested in carpooling together. Obviously, you want to get to know the person that you're going to be driving with a little bit. So you may want to have an initial meeting in a public place just to kind of get to know the person, see if you think you two would get along. And then if you're like, okay, this feels good, like let's give it a shot, make sure you have that person's full name, their contact information. You might even want to ask them for some personal references if you are still feeling a little bit hesitant. And then you're going to want their driver information, probably, so their license number, their plate number, their insurance information, that kind of stuff. I think the most important aspect of this is just to remember that it's important to listen to whatever your inner voice or your gut is telling you. So if something doesn't feel right, you aren't under any obligation to continue carpooling. It's supposed to relieve stress, not add to it. So you can even commit to a trial period if you say, okay, let's try this for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And if at the end of it, one of us isn't really feeling like this is for us, then no harm, no foul. We'll just, say we gave it a shot. Next slide. So locations and times. So really the key to a successful carpool, what a lot of this boils down to is communication. So you want to make sure that you are very clearly discussing and have clear confirmation on your pickup and drop off times, the routes that you're taking, and any stops you might be making. So if you're picking up, a few people in your carpool, who's getting picked up in what order, are you going to do a morning Tim Hortons run or something like that on your way to work? And then which days each person is carpooling is also important. So, some people have some remote work arrangements in place and maybe are only coming into the office a couple days a week. Make sure everybody's aware of that, communicating things around holidays, right? If you're going to be off for 2 weeks, making sure your carpool knows. Those kind of things are super important. Who's driving what days? If multiple people in your carpool have vehicles and you want to trade off the driving, making sure who's driving when, and then how to handle occasional lateness. So that's just a fact of life that sometimes people are going to be running a couple minutes behind. So having those agreements in place that say, okay, when we get to your place, we're willing to wait 5 minutes or something like that. And if that person isn't out in 5 minutes and you haven't heard from them, then the carpool is going to continue on its way. And even putting in having some discussions about, if that lateness becomes an ongoing issue, how you might want to handle that. So yeah, establishing these firm kind of communication, these firm schedules, it helps avoid misunderstandings and confusions. And even, it doesn't hurt to have this all written down so everybody in your carpool can refer to it. Next slide, please. So safety and respect. So for drivers, that looks like following the rules of the road, no speeding, no texting, making sure you're driving safely, and then just keeping your vehicle overall clean and in good condition. And passengers, you want to make sure that you're respecting that vehicle, you're being tidy, you're cleaning up after yourself, you're not leaving, garbage or anything in the vehicle. It's also good when you're having those communications around, like lateness and pickup times, all of that, to talk about in-car behavior preferences. So these might be around things like cell phones, fragrances, allergies, eating, drinking, smoking, music, even chatting. If you're carpooling into work at 7 a.m., maybe you have some rules in place that you're like, we're not going to be a chatty carpool. We're just going to put our tunes on and we're all going to kind of wake up together. But maybe at the end of the day, you're like, it's always nice to have somebody to sort of debrief about how the day went. And maybe then we'll be a bit more chatty, stuff like that. Just making sure that everybody's on the same page and trying to remain flexible. So try and be open to changing your personal habits, and be willing to be receptive of others, to ensure that everybody has an enjoyable ride. Next slide. All right, so communication and backup plans. So to make sure that you're not getting into those sort of miscommunications we talked about earlier, it's good to swap cell phone numbers. You might even want to start a group chat for your carpool if you've got, more than one person as part of your carpool group. And determine how much notice is needed in the event that plans change. I mean, sometimes those changes might be, you might not know super ahead of time, right? If you wake up and your kid's sick, and you're not going to go into work, then you tell them as soon as you know. But if it's something like a holiday, a medical appointment or something that means you're not going to be in that carpool, trying to set some ground rules around, okay, we'd like, at least a couple days notice, especially if you're maybe one of the drivers, and that means that, we have to make some arrangements there. And then discussing whether carpool confirmation is needed the day before, or if you're just going to assume that everybody's participating. So do you want to have a check-in the night before, to say, okay, who's carpooling today? Who's not? Are we all good? Or are we just going to assume that everybody's carpooling unless they indicate otherwise? And then breaking down how you want to share some of those costs that are associated with carpooling, right? How do you want to split those gas costs? How do you want to split parking if your workplace has paid parking, and things like vehicle maintenance? So a lot of what this boils down to is just being sure that you set out these plans, that you have these discussions, you make sure everybody's on the same page. A successful carpool isn't probably going to look exactly the same for everybody. But as long as everybody in your carpool group is in agreement, then it can be a success. So in terms of keeping those carpools successful, like I mentioned earlier, you can try a trial period before you commit to doing it long term. And just ensure that you're being patient, right? If it's been 2 days and you're like, oh, I don't know about this, like give it that full trial period, that full couple weeks, because sometimes it does take time to establish new habits, establish new routines. And then just making sure that you're, discussing any concerns that you have with your carpool partners, being honest, being respectful, not letting sort of those issues build up over time. And then having that sort of lead to a breakdown in your carpool. We really associate vehicles with convenience, especially like personal vehicles and being able to drive alone. So if you're ever, fall into that trap where you're like, oh, sometimes it is more convenient just to be driving by myself. Try and remember that when you do carpool, it means you're spending less time driving, which gives you more time to, maybe answer a couple of those emails, even just organize your thoughts for the day without having to worry about, keeping your eyes on the road, especially if, it's winter driving, it's dark, it's icy. Can really help if you're not having to do that every morning by yourself. It helps keep our environments and our communities healthy, gets some of that CO2 off of the roads. It can help build personal connections, especially if you're carpooling with people who, live in your neighborhood, who live by your house, who are maybe working the same job as you. It can be a great way to get to know more people in your community. And of course, it also helps you save money, which everybody loves. So yeah, I think those are pretty much all the tips we had. We were going to have somebody come and talk about their carpool, but unfortunately they had something come up and had to step away. But I know that they have really found, they've saved money, they've made some good connections with people in the community. So yeah, I'll pass things over to Mel to wrap it up here.
Awesome. Fantastic job, Lilia. Thank you so much for walking us through those things. We can often think that carpooling is just this simple, thing that we've been doing for a really long time, but it does, to set up a good, routine, successful carpool, there are things to think and to talk about just to make it work. So yeah, now we'll turn it over to you. If anybody has any questions to ask, maybe a group discussion question or questions for Lilia or I, definitely pop them into the Q&A. We're going to leave that open for the next minute or two. And definitely, if you think of something maybe after this webinar as well, you can always reach out to us at gohappy@greenactioncenter.ca. Just taking a look at the question board. It doesn't look like any are coming in. So I'll maybe walk us through just our final few slides here. So yes, you can find out more about us and our programming on our website. We're part of the Sustainable Transportation team, specifically today coming to you from Workplace Commuter Options. And you can reach out to us anytime. So we have Workplace Commuter Options. We also have our Active and Safe Routes to School program running as part of the Sustainable Transportation team here. You can reach out to us at gohappy@greenactioncenter.ca. Our phone numbers are on here as well. And if you haven't yet started your GoManitoba account, go to gomb.ca. Today, you can definitely start tracking those trips and be entered to win some great prizes as part of GoTober. Awesome. And that's all for us today. Definitely come back next week. We have an awesome carpool for you. Suzanne Simpson is going to join us. She's going to talk about a bike bus that they've been running kind of in the Norwood, Old St. Boniface area of the city. So this is great. We hear this a lot from folks that like, oh, I'd love to bike or bus, but I've got to drive my kids to school or this or that. So bike buses, walking school buses, those can be a great option to kind of partner with folks in your neighborhood to maybe reduce the need to drive the kids around all the time and to think of different ways to get around and to start easing some of that congestion as well. So definitely register for that. And we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for coming.